वीडियो चालू नहीं हुआ।
यहाँ से चालू हो गया।
आप पहले माइक्रोफोन बंद करो।
So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Faculty Development Program on 4th day, which is organized by Geeta Rattan International Business School. Virtual learning or blended form of learning is here to stay. However, it is not only the learning part of it, but how to assess students is also becoming worrisome for the faculty members. The assessment of performance of the students have also taken a shift. Now earlier it was traditional mechanism, but now it is more of blended form of way, or it is a way of how we can manage their assessment through online mode only. So to answer these kind of questions, we have Mr. Sukrit Ghosh with us today. He is going to discuss on virtual ways of assessments, its needs and techniques. He's going to give us in detail that how we can actually manage the assessment part of the students online. Mr. Sukrit Ghosh is a seasoned marketing and communication professional. He has more than 10 years of experience in core marketing and communication. He is presently working with Data Security Council of India, that is DSCI. And prior to joining DSCI, he had long stint with DXC Technology India. So let us welcome Mr. Sukrit Ghosh. With your permission, sir, I have kept your profile very brief so that we can have more interaction with you. So over to Professor Mr. Sukrit Ghosh now.
My bad. Am I audible? Thank you, Ms. Seema. So thanks for that kind introduction. Just wanted to check before I proceed. Am I audible? Is my video streaming clear with everyone in the audience?
Yes, sir. It is clear and audio is fine.
Great. Thanks for the confirmation, and thank you everyone who has joined us today for this session. It's an honor to join here and have a dialogue with all of you. I know you are all coming with diverse experience in the teaching line, and I'm an avid learner in this moment, and it's just that a few elements that I've had my share of luck to experience, which I thought of sharing with all of you. The idea is to have this session in a way which can, I would say, set up a mode of dialogue rather than just having something from my end to be shared with you. So I will do one thing. I will share my screen now. Just take a minute. So I will start sharing the screen, and I would request all of you to kindly let me know if the screen is visible or not.
Yes, the screen is visible.
Great. So I will skip my introduction part because that's already done. So, and I don't want it to stay there for long. So I will just quickly get going in the mode and in the requirement of everyone's time to be optimized. I would just want to start this conversation, and I would request all of you to kindly keep the engagement on either through the chat or the Q&A session that is possible to be done. And please feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with me. So first thing first, I will start with what is in store today. And the reason why I've kept this image of laptop and this term that what is in store today is because most of the time we have been using our laptops or even handheld devices to do a lot of online shopping. And I believe that is how we correlate with the new age use of technology. But things are changing. Things are moving into a new paradigm. There's a new paradigm shift coming up. And there's a lot of things which are going to take shape gradually. So without further ado, I would come directly to the theme of the session today, which is the assessment techniques in the virtual environment. This theme itself is quite heavy, and I will be very honest, it is not something which can be covered as a one-stop shop for any tool or for any way. It has to be an amalgamation of various thoughts and processes being put together to lead to the new normal, that is a hybrid life model. We have been talking about a lot of work from home models, but I assume, and this is my personal opinion, that we will soon be moving into a hybrid life model where there will be a mix of both the worlds, the physical world as well as the virtual world. So moving ahead with this session, I would like to call out all the elements that I'm planning to cover in this session. Before I go into that part, I would request again for everyone to share if my rate of speech, if my streaming of audio is optimal. I believe I will have a view of the chat, so I would quickly request you to share your inputs so that I can move ahead. Dr. Seema, I believe this view will tell me if people are able to hear me, or is it a separate means moderation queue that is handled at your end, which will let me know that they are able to hear me and see the screen properly?
Yes, sir, you are audible, very much audible. I am there. I'm Dr. Sheetal. I'm already all the time there, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sheetal.
Okay.
So I will move with the session in that case. So what we are going to cover today, like I said, I would like to have this as an engagement zone. It has to be something of a dialogue. So I will start with a quick audience input that I would request all of you to help me with. Then we'll identify a few basic elements. Next up, we will be going into some of the pain areas, and that is important to understand and kind of work towards an ecosystem which can service all the requirements in a proper way. Then we'll move into the how to assess part, which will be crucial for deriving that ROI out of the investment that you're doing in terms of your resources, your manas, your investment in time and effort. Then there will be a few additional tips and tricks that I can share from my personal experiences. And then one of the crucial elements when we look at the virtual side, it is the cybersecurity and the privacy elements. So I will talk about few do's and don'ts there, and then I will open it up for question and answers if there are any from your end. What I would like to also emphasize is that this session will not talk about any tool training. So I will definitely touch upon how you can use things, but it will be from an ideation and overall guidance standpoint. It won't be a particular tool training. So like I said, that I would like you to get involved early on into this session. So I would request all of you to invest a minute onto the slide now and try and see this slide, see this picture, and probably see if you can recognize anyone. I hope you got someone that you could recognize from this. Okay. So now I would say that Dr. Sheetal, if you can help me with this quick poll. And I would like to see how many of
Yes, the poll
audience
is on, sir,
members.
now.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I could see some interesting readings coming out of the poll. So those who are responding as yes, please do feel free to send it across the chat that who do you recognize? Because that is going to be important. That's going to be interesting for me as well. Dr. Sheetal, you can please let me know when you plan to close the poll, then we'll move forward with the session, because I believe the readings that I see on the screen right now is quite engaging, and it kind of gives me a lot of elements to build upon.
So should I end it now?
Yeah, if you think that the audience has already voted, then please. Otherwise, if there's somebody
Yeah,
who's pending,
14% are saying yes and 85% are saying no. So we have
okay,
got 1% in between. So I am ending the poll.
sure, sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Sheetal.
Mm.
So the quick check gave us 14% yes and 85% no, and 1% probably who are either yet to feed the inputs or they were not sure. So like I said, those 14% are interesting for me because I would really like to know who do you recognize. But going by the consensus, what I would say is that 86% of you were not able to recognize anyone. And that is something we found similar in the result. because that is something that I also related in the same way. I couldn't find anyone recognizable in that. One of the reasons for that was that I found it, and probably I will say that you also found it busy. So this image was very busy. People, you could see a lot of people, but it's like too many people and no attention to any particular name or a face. Probably then you found it also a bit cluttered. And last but not least, you may have started finding it as boring towards the end of the poll, probably when you were looking at the image and you were not able to recognize anyone. That's exactly what happens to this virtual audience these days. My reason of showing you this image and bringing it onto the poll was to just have that correlation, that whatever you see in the virtual world may not be attractive to gauge your attention. So it's very important for each and every one of us who's planning to invest time and effort to engage with an audience in the virtual environment to understand the pain areas of this environment. Because with everything good, there are some elements which may require close attention. So just a quick snapshot, and pardon me if some of the color elements are not rendering properly. I will read out all these elements in the interest of everyone's clear view. So what is happening at present? One of the biggest elements that you see is happening is we are over communicating, or there is an over communication of sessions, over communication of themes, and they're coming from all directions, because with the COVID-19 pandemic comes the use of virtual technologies, but at the same time your audience is quite restricted. You are trying to reach out to the same audience again and again, and when I say you, it's not just one person, it's not just one brand, it's the entire ecosystem, because everyone is a consumer or customer to someone, so they are all trying to reach out to us. As a result, what is happening is many a times we'll see a lot of these sessions appearing like a session for monologue, where it's one-way communication happening, just trying to push things to someone, not understanding what the other person is wanting to share or say, not relating to it, and probably not even considering it. At the same time, it also provides an audience a benefit of choosing from plenty. So there are plethora of options out there. Confusion is there to in the mind of the audience as well as in the mind of the, I will say, the orchestrator, that what to do, how to do. That confusion will always be there. Another key element on the virtual side, which would be evident even in this session, would be probably the attention span issue in this digital era. We are consumed with so many devices. I'm personally hooked to multiple devices. There's one device which takes care of my office. There's one device which takes care of my personal requirement. There's a laptop which is being worked around on multiple windows for different tasks. So there's too many things happening at the same time. On top of that, timing is mostly mistimed, which causes another big problem for the audience to kind of engage with you. We don't know what the best time is. We are working across different time zones. With the education sector itself, there are knowledge transfer sessions or programs. There are students moving from different part of geographies to India and from India to different part of geography. So they are all in different time zones. Are we all able to connect with them at the right time? So these questions will always be there. And all the 5 points which I've mentioned above kind of summarizes the importance of data analysis, which to a large extent till date is insufficient. As a result of which, the perception is that online trainings or online sessions are boring. That's a general perception. If you ask any student or you ask any audience, any desired customer of a brand, they would eventually say that unless until it matches their requirement for that particular time, the remaining part of the session becomes boring. Second thing that strikes them is technical difficulties, and there are plethora of that also, because either your system is not rooted, your internet connection is not stable, your microphone, your camera setup is not in sync. So there are a lot of things which add to that kind of pain. Along with that comes the lack of structure piece. You can't relate to the content. Many a times we come up with sessions which start off at a I would say a peak, but then it decreases in its engagement level. It decreases. It kind of misses on to the context and moves to a different direction. That also causes a lot of problem. Maybe to some extent, even my this discussion with you may appear like that, as I'm going to try and bring in elements from different worlds together to come to the core theme. But before that, all of these are important because you are the flag bearers in most of the cases. You are the one who's running these shows for the universities, for the colleges, and at the same time, the student community is looking up to you. Attention span issue again takes prominence because it is a perception now. If I am a user and I found it, it becomes my perception. The same perception flows with the crowd. And believe it or not, we do have a herd mentality here. So we follow the herd. So if somebody has quoted that it has an attention span issue, then it would be termed as something which has attention span issue. Then, and that's the reason why you would have seen that in the slide also, I've kept some of the elements distinct. The symmetry has gone for a toss for a particular reason, because that is the gap which appears when you plan to organize something versus how it is perceived. Timing has become cruel. So this is a perception again from the audience. They think that work from home means that you are available 24/7. It means that you are kind of hooked with your system. Your personal time has gone for a toss. So all those things, end of the day, I would say, calibrate timing to be cruel. On top of that, the biggest or the biggest impacting fundamental in a virtual scenario, the insufficient networking time. When it comes to physical classes or physical meetups, that networking time is crucial because that's where your human touch counts. That's when you meet people, interact with them, and that's how you kind of engage with them, you remember them. But in the virtual world, it is getting diluted day by day because there are too many to focus. On top of that, from an academic standpoint, you will feel that there is a lack of practice ground, which causes again a change of perception. And this is not directed to anyone. Please pardon me if it appears to be not required, but still I'm quoting it because it is important for a virtual session to work in that way, that the delivery issues need to be mitigated. Wherever you are trying to deliver to a rectangle box in front of you, that is your laptop or your desktop, you are limited in how you are perceived. In a physical classroom, you can at least gauge those through the human cues that come. But in the virtual world, like I am playing blind right now. I'm blindsided at how you are reacting to my discussion with you. I'm just probably trusting on a chat tool, or I'm trusting on a video streaming potential of a tool, which may be making it really good, or it may actually backfire. So these are the kind of things which will always be at the back of my mind. But at the same time, I need to ensure that at least whatever I'm trying to share gets registered. So I'm hopeful, and probably I will learn from this experience. Similarly, the same thing happens for all those people who are trying to connect on the virtual world. So what is required now is something that you may have heard time and time again. And I don't want to just go by the book once again to just showcase this term, but the fact is it is real. Because the time is now to change from something that we have been doing for many years, which may not be required now, or which may not work in the way that you want it to work. So that is where change is important. I know as students, I've been a student, I've been to some extent a guest lecturer, I've been in the management seat. So I know whenever we try to bring about a change, there are, I won't call them resistance, but there are thoughts which challenge that change element. So the same thing will happen in this virtual world, but it is required. If you evaluate the kind of acceptance level a community had for any digital change, it has exponentially grown in the last 3 decades. A change that would have come in the early 90s would have taken good 10 years to get implemented, compared to what came in 2000 which may have got implemented within 5 years. But now, if you look at 2 more decades beyond that, the delta is shrinking significantly. Now apps are coming and they are getting downloaded like they are everywhere. So that is how the community is looking at technology. Everybody is trying to embrace that change, and if we are not the early advantage takers, then we would definitely be termed as the laggards, and it would impact businesses, it would impact the future generation, because they would be driven by a particular thought process. Those who kind of run, who can ride the tide and show their thoughts, they will be consumed early. Whereas I would say the experience is, if they are not supported and not, I would say, backed by technology, will not get that mind share. So that is important that we understand the power of change here. So while we understand this power of change, there are a few basic elements which will always stay, and it's just about adding some permutations and combinations to make them work. One of the key elements of change, and I've termed it as key here itself, is engagement level. So do anything, one thing that you need to ensure is that engagement is optimal. That is going to be the key for all the success that is there to be taken. Then mix it, and then how to attend that, not, pardon me for that, it's not mixing it, how to attend that engagement. They will be depending on content, and content with the right way of communication can be termed as the king. Then one needs to be smart enough to, just like we work in our management ecosystem, or in our governments, every leader will have a set of ministers to work on particular elements. So at this stage where the pandemic has hit us and we are to some extent crippled of not being out in the world, not able to meet people, I would say use your tools as your ministers. You being a leader in the domain that you are working, use tools, craft them for optimal use so that you get the maximum ROI out of it. Pardon me if I sound like a marketer when I use the terms like ROI, but return on investment is going to be consistent across all functions. So it is the investment on your efforts and the depth of knowledge that you have. How you bring it out would be dependent on the technology piece, which is supported by the tools. So treat tools as your ministers. And one of the crucial elements, like I mentioned in the previous slide also, analytics. They are the guardians here. So I'm terming all the analytics put together because that's how you should look at analytics. It should not just be fragmented. It should be a composite and a comprehensive view of all the analytics put together. Treat them as the guardians, because whatever you do, you need to map the outcome to run those, and while running those analytics to get to that ROI. Because today people are fast paced and always on the lookout of the light at the end of the tunnel. So we need to align ourselves. So that's why I've mentioned this, that you have to align yourself too. But first, it's just time to reflect upon something of the past, and we have been followers of some school of thought. I have come from a different school. Probably everyone in this audience may have different thought process basis the school of thoughts they kind of come from. So I'm just going by some of the textual pieces here for a few minutes. We have always referred to the learning pyramid here, where we talked about the retention span basis, all the elements that were seen in participatory teaching methods as well as passive teaching methods. In the participative one, we have always, and then this pyramid talks about it, that 90% are done through teaching them on a regular basis. Then 75% retention happens when you do it, so practicing what we are doing. 50% retention happens when we're doing it in a group discussion. That's probably the reason why group discussions are very important elements even till date for various screenings. Then the passive ones are through demonstrations. These were largely done by the marketers in the past, where demonstrations used to get them the customers. But then the demonstrations also changed, and then you saw the inception of audio-visual elements. Then though I would say 10% retention agreed on reading, but reading has been consistent. So you ask anybody, they would say that they are an avid reader if they have grown in their career. So reading will always stay there. And probably 5% used to be quoted for the lecture piece where a person is talking about it and it's getting retained. But in the virtual world, it has changed a lot. Now, passive is also now participative. And I've just inverted this pyramid to just show that it's not about the numbers anymore. I wouldn't say that this is the best graph to explain or the previous one was the best graph to explain, but it's going to be an amalgamation of both of them together. It has to be done in a sync. Only then you would be able to do the first part well, which is to place your thought, to get that mind share. Unless until you have that mind share, you are not able to penetrate into the audiences that you want to engage with. So next is how do we get that engagement? But before that, before we get into that engagement piece, I would like to understand if there are any thoughts from the audience which you would like to place with me. Because the unfortunate scenario for a virtual engagement is the one-way communication that happens predominantly. I'm going to talk about how you can make it happen in a different way, but for now, I would like to know, I would like to see what is that you are finding relevant. If there's something that you didn't find relevant or you have a query, please feel free to share that with me. So Dr. Sheetal, if any question is coming to your way, please let me know so that I can table that and then move forward.
Sir, there is a question. If you want me to raise it now, I can do
Yes,
that.
please tell me. If it comes in the context, I will take it. Otherwise, if I'm covering it in the later part of the slides, I will park it for that. So you can share that with me.
Yeah, this is related to the pyramid you've just spoken about. The Miss Dr. Divya Goyal is saying that this pyramid is interesting. So, what kind of teaching pedagogy you suggest for remote teaching when you don't know whether the student is even listening or not?
Okay, I'm sorry. Who asked this question, Doctor?
This is Dr. Divya Goyal.
Dr. Divya. So, Dr. Divya, I have an answer for this question, and I would be covering it in the later part of the session. So, I would request you to kindly stay on with this. I will definitely answer this question because this was the reason why I placed that pyramid in the slide. Because there are, again, technical linkages possible to kind of work it out. Dr. Sheetal, any other question?
None so far, sir. We can proceed with it.
Great. So in the interest of time, I will move to the next slide. I just hope my rate of speech is okay for everyone.
Yes, sir. It is perfectly fine.
Thank you. So, like Dr. Divya asked that question, so the answer comes from here. I know these are again maybe appearing to be a bit of marketing centric, but they are not. Trust me, because these apply in every sphere of our life. And marketing is just a function, and I can definitely talk about it more because I have been closely associated with the HR function also in my past experience with different organizations. So I am a firm believer that function is just one thing that you do it with your whole heart effort, but overall it's the ecosystem that we plan to probably develop or contribute to. So thinking out of the box is applicable across the length and breadth of the industries, across the length and breadth of all the functions that are there. And I definitely place a huge onus on the academia for this because that is where it starts. That is where probably the gurus give it to the audience, give it to the pupils that they need to think out of the box. And while we preach it, it's time to practice what we preach so that we live up to their expectations as well. So like I said earlier, treat content and write communication plan like a king. The reason why I mentioned that is, I know the theme for this session today is assessment, but what is that you're going to assess is something that this part defines, because it is the content that will either make or break a session, and that holds true for anything. Basically, content makes or breaks a personality, makes or breaks a product, and institutions. So content will always play the biggest role when you start off with something. So I have quoted it as king, but how does a king rule? So for a king to rule, it's very simple 6 elements that I thought of tabling with all of you. It starts with creating content which is clutter free. So a practice from our end, I will again quote my experience here. When I started off with creating PowerPoint slides, I'm not going to say that I'm good at PowerPoint slides. Trust me, I'm not. But if I rate myself from where I started off to what I am at least confident of presenting to all of you, I would say that I have grown a bit. I've learned a lot of things from many people. And one of the key things that I've learned from my manager in the past and people I've looked upon is how to unclutter the thoughts and place them and create a mind share. So that is something that all of us will keep on we have to relook. We have to dive deep into all the content elements that we are reading ourselves. So I assume that all of you, including me, when I go for the guest lectures, I also do that. That I do read through all the previous books that I've read, or I do read through all the articles which are means up to date. One of the key elements that I have taken as a derivative of all of those reading is that how do we unclutter? So my emphasis on any content that you are planning to create would be to create it in a way that it appears clutter free. Second important part would be to make it real and relevant. I know we are all coming and we are all part of probably a system where we do rely on a lot of old knowledge elements. I'm not questioning them. I'm not going to challenge any of them. They are important. But we also need to understand that how much of that is actually applicable in today's world, which defines our students being industry ready or not. So I'm going to give a very simple example. We have read about, and these are the terms which have been used on a funny note also. Either we have talked about thermodynamics, or we have talked about trigonometry, or even logs. To be really honest, not everyone will use these, but the majority of the population would probably read or use digital marketing elements, would probably use and probably not only use, they will focus more on understanding human behaviors. So these are some of the key elements which comes from all of you as lecturers and professors that a student will imbibe. If I am looking at a guru teaching me something, I know a part of that would be covered in the books. But what the guru would actually bring in front of me when he or she is in a class, talking about things, sharing the experiences, would they are unparalleled. I cannot match it because as a student, I have not yet experienced those. Whereas a thought leader will always be able to do that. So I would say whenever you're creating a content, create it with the focus being on making it real and relevant. Third element is be precise. We tend to, again, I will quote, these are my personal experiences, so I don't want any of you to make it or feel that it is something that I'm creating out of consensus. This is purely my personal thoughts. During my school days or college days, I always used to hear that the more you write, the more correct you are. Means you're recognized as you're the right person to answer those. That trend may still be working in the physical world where you are writing things, where your questions have been created basis that kind of thought process, where you want the student to go deep and write about all the possibilities. But in the digital world, it is a complete reversal. Here, precise things sail fast. So if you, and I believe many of you would be consumers of digital platforms like either Amazons or Flipkarts, you would have seen a lot of these uh, the ads that come. They're very I would say short in tenure. You will, if you are using Facebook, if you're using Instagram, you will see a lot of these ads are for probably 10 seconds, 15 seconds. There are longer versions also, but they're of a different reason. They're there for a different reason. But all the ones which require a quick action, they're very small in length. That is the reason, because the attention span is small. People will tend to move on to the next set of content if your content appears lengthy to them. So I would say please be precise when you try to present anything on the virtual side. Yes, if that requires more in-depth knowledge, create a precursor out of it. Create a follow-up series for it. So you will get to know that out of the 100 students, 15 were interested in going deep into it. So you get to know about their interest areas also somehow. And then you can build upon that in closed group workshops. But for the overall class, probably keeping it short and precise will be working better. Fourth is being warm and attentive. Now, I know attentive appears to be something which is a task for the students, but in the virtual world, it is also an important element for the presenter. Like if you see what I was trying to do, and I will continue to do so, is try to engage with you with checking with you if you have any question, probably engage with you with some polls. These are just for the session that I've created for today. But if I want to make it something of a lesson or a lecture series, I would like to add more elements there so that I appear warm. Notional value can cause a lot of problem. So in the physical world, you can still balance it by showing some warmth, compassion. In the virtual world, whatever you appear on the screen is taken as the real you. So your real you may be very different, but the perception may be very different from that because of your avatar on the screen. So I would say try to keep yourself as warm and as compassionate as possible. Try to open yourself up to all the questions and the queries that may come up, and be attentive on all the cues that you get to see, because today I'm not an organizer of this session. I don't have the control on the dashboard, but whenever I am doing my sessions, and when I say my session, I'm talking about the DSCI sessions that we have been doing. Most of the time I am the moderator. So as a controller, I get to see all those elements that can help me explain it to my speakers or my colleagues on what to focus on. So there are attentiveness elements that needs to be looked upon. There are question and answer sets that need to be looked upon, because many times people will tend to feel that they are not wanted. If I have a question, I send it to the moderator and it is not taken, then I feel left alone. So that is something we need to curb, because if we don't do that, we are somewhere down the line hitting on an emotional element that I am not wanted. So we'll have to save ourselves from that kind of perception being created for ourselves. So for that, keep the conversation warm and be attentive yourself while you own those sessions. Be the organizers for those sessions yourselves. Fifth, pay attention to typography. This is only from a standpoint that you may use a lot of visual cues, but if you're not using, then at least the typography can help you gauge those attention. What I've done in this slide is very simple. I have not played around with the typography much, but I've tried to bring it more visually in front of you. I'm not sure whether I'm doing it in a successful way or not, but I'm trying my best to make it appear at least distinct so that you can look into the slide once. And last is motivate the audience, because like I said, you have to preach and practice what you preach. So the same thing happens when you motivate your audience. Do these sessions, get them engaged, ask them to participate, give them the ownership. Just like being one of the naughtiest students in my early days of my schooling, I was given the role of a class monitor, and that's a very I would say a standard practice. So when that used to happen, the moment the onus was on me to ensure that everyone else is maintaining the decorum, I used to get civilized myself. So the same thing will happen when you kind of pass the baton to someone who is wanting to come and share something. So that can be student. So please allow them, please motivate them to come forward, because with the virtual environment, one good thing is happening is that it is pushing people towards public speaking, for which we used to invest probably thousands of rupees to learn, is by the virtue of virtual sense getting free now. So these are a few elements which probably may be beneficial to kind of capitalize on. And always think how you can make an impact with your content. This slide has no other meaning than to just grasp your attention and to show that there is something, even in a quiet little town next to the beach, a breezy day, breezy night, everything is fine. The moment there is a lightning, it catches your attention. So same thing happens when you work on your content. Any piece of content can go viral. You will never even know. And please don't plan your content with an intent of making it viral. Plan it with all the past elements that we discussed, it will automatically become viral if it is worthy. So keep working on it again and again, and you will see that improvement in probably what you are sharing. It gives you a good feel. Plus, you will see an engagement pattern change, which will be towards the positive side. Now, let's talk about the ministers. This is the place from where the assessment piece actually kicks in. There are many ministers out there right now, and we call them tools. What we need to be mindful is how we use this and the time of the usage, because that needs to be done in a judicious manner. So I would now request not a poll, but a few answers to Dr. Sheetal. If all of you can just feed in your pointers on which all tools are these. Over the chat, just mention the tool name. I just wanted to understand. I know there will be a few tools which are visible. So apart from that, please help me understand which all tools you can recognize out of this. It's easier than the previous assignment, which I asked you to recognize one person out of the entire crowd. So I'm assuming this is a little easier.
Yeah, sure. Sure, sir. So far, none has responded. Participants, okay, yeah, we have got some answers coming, sir. We
Okay.
have people saying that it is Zoom platform. Many of them are saying it is Microsoft. Others are saying again Zoom class, Google Meet, WhatsApp, Telegram, uh, Teams, Zoom, Microsoft, uh,
Great.
Google Meet. This is inverted webinar. One is saying WebEx. People are saying Zoom, go to webinar, Zoom. So these are the answers which are coming, sir. WhatsApp, Team, repeated.
Great. Great. So thank you everyone for showing that engagement and sharing these names. Uh, most of you are correct. I would say everyone is correct because there may be a few tools which are not here, but yes, all of these are tools, and all of these tools are getting used extensively. And you have seen their sales go over the top in post pandemic. So that is actually the power of technology these days. I will right now focus on a few of these tools. I wouldn't like to say that I have any bias towards any of these tools. These are the tools that I have been using myself, and I will particularly name them basis the usage and the kind of engagement that I've seen happen on these tools. One of the tool itself is the Webinar Jam, where we are all connected right now. We have GoToWebinar as another tool from LogMeIn. We have a Cisco WebEx as a tool. Everybody knows Zoom, and Microsoft coming up with MS Teams as in parallel with Skype, but now MS Teams is getting more prominence, and then Google Meet. These are the tools which are readily known. There are other tools as well, Demio, and which integrates with a lot of other ERP systems to give you edge when you try and do it from marketing standpoint. But I'm going to restrict my thoughts on academic elements here. So from that standpoint, I will go with these. Probably will have Demio as one of the tools to this added. Here on, I would request all of you to engage with me and share your thoughts while I'm sharing my thoughts, because I'm going to talk about a few of these points that you see on the screen, and I'm going to talk about how the difference can be seen, how the following pointers help in the assessment piece. So polls we all know is there. We have been using polls. We started off using a poll today in this session itself. So what do you think is the importance of a poll? And please, Dr. Sheetal, I would request you to please voice all the thoughts as and when they come.
Sure, sir. Sure.
You can stop me if I'm saying something, and please share their thoughts, because this is important. This is where it is an ecosystem work, not my thoughts being shared with everyone. I want everyone to share the thoughts with each other. So I would go one by one on these elements. I will start with polls. So what is your understanding of polls here? You can please feel free to answer it in the chat, and Dr. Sheetal can probably share it with me. I will share my understanding in the meantime. Polls is one of the quick, handy tools within a session that helps you engage. I'm going by some bookish answers here. This is just one part of it. I will definitely come to the second part of this, which is the important element.
So,
Second,
sir, sorry, I mean, I'm interrupting in between, but I have received few inputs. Like people are saying that it provides feedback. It
Mhm.
says that it generates involvement, attentiveness in interest. It provides feedback. It rather give instant feedback. Keep participation, and they are attentive here. Polls help to understand the understanding of audience in the same context. Get to know people, agreement or disagreement. So these are the answers I have received, sir.
Great. So that actually helps me. All of you are actually thinking on the same ground and around the same lines. What I will just add here is an element which I will cover next in the slide, where we need to just focus more on these elements, and then you will definitely find a route to the assessment part. Right now, these are also important assessments which can be qualitative in nature. This, along with some of the other peripheral elements, would have a quantitative analysis also. Similarly, handouts. Many of the tools will provide you options to share handouts, which are equivalent of sending or sharing notes. Now, handouts can, what I would recommend is, as I have been valuing this, that anybody who puts in effort is valued more than a cut copy paste mechanism being showcased. So whenever there is a session and you are sharing some handouts, try to share handouts which are handwritten. These are some engagement tools, but it will give you benefit. I know it may be a difficult task when you say that how do I make it handwritten and when we are typing on the keyboards. So what I would recommend is, simply put, just write it on a piece of paper. Most of us nowadays have a smartphone which captures decent photograph. Take that photograph, push it onto a Word file, and save it as a PDF, and then send it as a handout. What it does is it gives you that element of warmth, element of a human touch being shared virtually or digitally, as well as it gives high weightage against things which are readily available. Because this particular document will not be available on a Google search, whereas any other document which a lecturer would like to share as a derivative of Google search with the source links may be something which a student may think that, okay, this is there in Google, so I can search it later on. So that is how you will plan to engage. Again, there will be analytics, and I'm going to talk about analytics to give you the assessment scorecard elements. Third element is whiteboard. Few of these tools will give you an option to whiteboard your thoughts. That will be niche, that will be exclusive to that session. So use those as avenues to engage and avenues to even assess, because whiteboards, by the virtue of its technological frame, are not saved or not registered unless and until a person is attentive. So that is another way that you can assess people out of the crowd. Chat and Q&A windows, again, the same way of probably polls, but in a different way because they're different modules. But the engagement level can be seen. You can actually see basis analysis of all these, that how much of the audience was actually engaged with you. Surveys are mostly post session. I won't say that they are the best tools, because if you run surveys during the session, they are polls. If you do it after the session, then it is approximation. So you may get result out of 100 students in a batch strength of 100. You may get the survey results of 100, whereas the attentiveness was only of 58. So that 42 will not be found unless and until you correlate it with other elements. So the power of correlation will definitely be required here. And the last option that I'm going to talk about, the offering piece, is the video sharing, where a personalized touch comes through the avenue of video. Along with that, definitely there are instant messages, HD videos, because that gives you the benefit of being streamed in a high quality. Backed with the compatibility of devices, makes it convenient for a person like me to probably see how I'm looking up on a screen when I'm looking at probably a phone. Screen sharing allows me to see means what the lecturer or a professor is trying to share with me. Voice notes, new thing, but audio notes is the next thing. So they will definitely take the market. Important. So you'll see there will be a growth of podcasts in the near future. It's already booming, but it will grow further. So use that as an option to engage with your audience. And then there are application sharing avenues which are beneficial. So when an application sharing is happening, at that time, there are matrices which the tool will provide you. So look into that. I covered most of this part, that what you can do with them. So I will now talk about how. So when I said poll with a twist, that is what I am trying to draw analogy from what was already shared by most of you. And Dr. Sheetal, were there any other thoughts around all the other elements?
We have a few more questions. They are asking like, sometimes in virtual environment we see learners are physically present, but intellectually not. So how do we resolve this kind of issue? And how does it
Okay.
play a role in the assessment of that particular student?
So if I understood the question correctly, the first question I'm taking, that if the person is physically present but intellectually not at par. My understanding of the question is correct?
Yes, sir.
So I would say here there is a gap, and this gap can only be reviewed internally first, and then once it goes out, only then you will get to know about the external feedback. But when you do the internal review, like for example, I will take my example here. Dr. Ghosh was kind enough to invite me for this session. I'm not sure if I'm the best person to answer this. I'm trying my level best to do it. So there may be a gap. I may not be able to answer the best possible way for all of you to kind of take it as a key takeaway. But at the same time, if you, while analyzing my profile, analyzing my content, found that it kind of marries with what you want to attain, then this gap can be mitigated. Yes, I won't say that in the virtual environment, please don't play blind. So I would definitely say that there are many players in the market who do a lot of personal branding, invest on pushing their ads to get that mind share. But I would recommend, please do a due diligence before the session as well. Because once you go live with a session, you are live. You cannot take it back. So the content will play an important role, and the intellectual property, the intellect of a person needs to come and be visible in those sessions. And I'm holding it on me also. I may not be living up to your expectation today, but at the same time, I'm trying. So either you can give that element of trial as a buffer to play with, or you take a judicious call and analyze and take a firm decision whether to go with that person or not. Because if there is a gap, the first impression can actually cause a lasting impression. So this important element is something that will require human review. It's not technologically driven. Yes, you may get some technology matrices basis the outcome of that session. So you will definitely see the kind of engagement that you saw in a session, the kind of question answers that happened, the polling frequency, the response to that, their attentiveness scorecards. All of this will definitely tell you whether the choice was right or not. But if it fails, then it fails. So that is somewhere you'll have to do a due diligence with research, as well as, I would say, to some extent, a little bit of gut feel. Darshit, what was the second question on the assessment, right?
Yeah, they want to know like if the person is not participating, it is going to affect their assessment part also. So
Correct.
if what to do in such kind of circumstances?
So participation here is a factor of, I would say, multiple elements. Participation is not just mere logging into a system and being there. So there are elements that needs to be looked upon, and that starts from, I would say, okay. So I will go first into this because this is interesting here. When you are sending an invite to anyone to join a virtual session, the first the first touch point itself gives you analytical element. So the so you may have created a form of which, let's say, there are 10 fields, of which there are 7 fields which are mandatory, 3 which are non mandatory. Assessment starts from there itself. The 7 are mandatory, so everybody, by the virtue of at least logging in or getting a recording link or something that they plan to do, will feed those 7 fields. But the remaining 3, those who are feeding it with interest will definitely feed that. Those who want to and they are, I would say, apprehensive, will reach out to you. So that is again another metric that you will get. Like for example, if my form has a mobile number as one of the form elements, people may be apprehensive of sharing the mobile numbers. So they may want to attend that session, but they may not be liking to share that mobile number. So either they choose to reach out to me saying that I'm not comfortable sharing the mobile number. So I know that this person is already engaged with me. Now I need to respond to that person in a way that I retain him. So that is a task with me. At the same time, there are people who would not even fill that form or fill 00 or NA or any kind of arbitrary signs and register. You will get those kind of registration data which you need to analyze. That's where I was coming when I was mentioning about your guardians being analytics. Everything goes down to the core, and core is analytics. So you'll have to see and evaluate all these parameters, starting from your registration form filling to the in-session engagement. So both of them will, not both, there are many elements, they will all come together and give you the result. And those results are unique. So definitely there will be an investment of time and effort. But if you really want to do that assessment judiciously and benefit and support a student's career, I would request and I would urge every one of you to look into all these parameters while giving them those marks basis the assessment that happens. Did that answer the question somehow? Both the questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have one more question. Like it is similar
Yeah.
to earlier one. The person is asking that in the case of polls, when the students are not participating, what to do in such kind of circumstances?
So first and foremost, you are organizing a poll basis your own thought process. So if and all of us know which all subjects or which all I would say chapters in a particular subject are interesting and which all are not so interesting. So we always try to play around when we try and go out there in front of them to engage them. So probably that kind of combination would be required even in the polls. What we can do is we can do a trend analysis. If you see that, let's say I'm assuming that all of you would be handling a batch of 60, not more than that. I'm just assuming, I may be wrong, but just in the interest of time, I will just assume 60 is the batch strength. And you have been doing sessions starting April, and till June you would have done somewhere around 20 sessions. In each of these sessions you would have done, let's say, 2 or 3 polls, let's say 3 polls on an average. So you have 60 polls, and now you have 60 poll analytics with you, because the registration form or the dump that the platform would be providing you would give you the details of who answered those polls and who didn't. So from there you can definitely do a trend analysis on each head. There's a simple pivot that you can run. So that gives you a clear-cut identification of a segment of the class which is actually attentive with you, and there's another segment which is not. And there may be another segment which is borderline, which may have participated in 15, 10 of the sessions and 10 didn't. So you know now there are 3 segments to cater, and these 3 segments can be dealt differently. The engaged ones are your blessings, so you don't need to invest too much on them unless until you see a downwards curve on their engagement level. But for the others, you will have to work it out. So you have to definitely work that part once. With these kind of details, I'll just take a minute. I will just take a sip of water. Thank you. So with these kind of details, you will get to know how this entire batch is functioning with you. And you'll have to voice it in a warm tone when you see there is a dip. Because end of the day, if you're assessing them for a semester, then there will be number of sessions that you would have done. There would be number of assignments that you would have rolled out. There would be number of tools that you have used, and each tool will give you different kind of analytics. Even for that matter, I will go a little deep onto the usage, which includes support from your IT and marketing team. But those elements, those data points will definitely be important for you. Does that help a bit in answering this question?
Sure, sir. Sure. I have one last question here. People are asking how to assess in breakout groups. I think the
So
yeah.
I believe that the person who asked this question, they would have been using primarily breakout groups using WebEx. Is my understanding correct?
That possibly he can answer. Dr. Karunakar, he has asked this question. Uh, so
If we can
no
just
answer is
elaborate on
coming.
how he has planned these breakup groups, I would be able to answer that better. Probably what you can
Right.
do is, Dr. Tarun, you can just share the answer, means share the background while I move to the next section, and then again I will come back to this question to answer this.
Right, sir.
So I was on the handouts. So handouts to engage is already what I covered. That how you can engage by making it handwritten, by giving it a human touch. Whiteboards, definitely by the virtue of digital whiteboards, they will be live. So make them as engaging and as collaborative as possible. Chat with focus. Now, this is where a person who's organizing a session will have a play. Like if I was organizing this session today, I would have been chatting with many of you looking at the dashboard. And that would have happened basis your attentiveness scorecard. What it does is, even if as a student I am not attentive, sorry, excuse me, even I'm not attentive, but I get that chat notification, it tells me that you are monitoring me. And thereon I become attentive. So these are small cues which will help significantly. Another simple way of doing it, which is a replica of a classroom model, is that you know that there are two students chit-chatting while you are taking a lecture. So all of a sudden you call their names. And they are like taken aback that how come they have been called out. And thereafter they become focused. So same thing can happen on the virtual side. All you have to do is you have to run by those analytical elements that are showing, that the tool is showing you, so that you can pinpoint those particular names and bring them back if they have lost track, or engage with them, asking them to ask questions, or asking them the questions so that they can answer. So these are some of the elements that can work, and these are all human behavioral elements which technology does support. So that's something that we have as a boon. Surveys, what you can do is you can infuse prompt action. So most of the time surveys are looked upon as research elements and people go slow on them. So out of 100 people who attended your session, probably 10 will answer the survey. One way to make it count is induce prompt action. Call it out during the session that this survey would be required. It is mandatory. This is required for this reason. Show them that this is required to even enhance the quality of knowledge sharing, so that they feel that it is a participative session and they don't feel it's a top-down approach. So a bottom-up approach on a virtual front will definitely help. Video sharing, this is purely personal to every one of you who's going to come in front of video. Focus on personal branding. Why I'm saying this is, the moment you start talking about things that you are doing, and best is people doing it for you, not you yourself, but initially you'll have to do it yourself. Your personal brand counts. Not to draw any kind of comparison, but in a peer group, everyone will have a different personal branding level, and there will be a different notional value associated with them. So there may be some favorites, there may be some colleagues, and there may be some who can be better avoided. So the best thing to actually do is to come in the favorite side. So how to do it is probably an amalgamation of all of these things put together, where you bring in the warmth, where you bring in the agility, and focus on personal branding in a surrogate way, so that you are always in the, means you get the mind share, you're in the top of their mind. So the big question that haunts me right now, because I've been given this task to address it, that how do you assess this virtual community? A part of that we already covered in bits and pieces in the previous discussions that we have had. Dr. Sheetal, did Dr. Tarun mention about that thing? Then I can probably table it now.
Uh, he is talking about Blackboard. He's saying Blackboard. This is the one word he has mentioned.
Okay. So when you do breakout sessions, now to be really honest, on a virtual site, breakout sessions can only be done with focus groups. Breakout sessions, if you plan to do some breakout sessions with a larger, with a common audience, then you tend to see some deviation, and that is inevitable because interest rating will impact this. People may have different interests, and your breakout session may not be related to that. So I would say breakout sessions are good when you know that there are a set of people who would be particularly engaging on a particular breakout session. Otherwise, it's better to avoid breakout sessions in a virtual scenario because you cannot monitor. In a physical world, you can monitor that, but in virtual, you cannot do it efficiently because there are tool dependence which causes probably analytical gaps because the data is not refined yet. Not all tools will give you all the data that you need to curate the responses or build upon it as a follow-up session. So that is where I feel it may be a bit challenging, but apart from that, I don't see it as a big challenge, but try to reduce it to a level, I would say reduce it to the level that can be managed in a human way, because that causes a problem. I will be honest, it's something that has caused problems multiple times. I will just take a minute. Yeah, that has caused problem multiple times in multiple sessions because of the kind of engagement level not being worked about. I will just take 1 minute, if you may allow. I have to send something quickly. Yeah, I'm sorry. Does that answer by any chance, Dr. Sheetal?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Absolutely. We have got two more questions related to what you've been discussing in the last slide. It's about that. How does one build up personal branding and make it participative? This is a question by Dr. Dilip.
How do can you please come again? How do you?
It is how does one build personal branding and make it participative?
Okay, so personal branding happens when you connect with individuals. So that is a pre-session work, I would say. You'll have to connect with your students because this is a session focused on students. You have to connect with your students, understand their thought processes, and work in a way that it marries with their thoughts. And then when you start a session, you will see that your personal brand which you have created works very well for you in the virtual front. So it's not something that happens overnight. It will take a lot of time, and that happens by the virtue of you engaging with them on WhatsApp chats. That works on the basis of you engaging with them over email communication, a lot of things. But it is how much of it can be termed as liking. To be very simple, it is more about liking. So if you can develop that rapport with that audience, then your personal branding has already started working for you. And when you create a session to engage with that group, it gets shown, it's visible in that session, because you will see, if you compare it with probably some other session where the personal branding was not focused on, you will see there is a difference in attentiveness, there is a difference in the responses, and the follow-up session registrations, a lot of things will be visible. And that is how you, it's more like a I would say a customer level approach, a targeted approach, which requires some efforts from the personal end, which may be a little time consuming, but it's good to do. I won't say it's a mandatory step, but it's a good to do. That's why I've kept it as the last thing in the slide as well. Does that help?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Shall we proceed? I have one last question in that. Is about that giving more example about the polls with twist. You have mentioned something about poll with twist. So they're asking for examples.
Okay.
If you can mention any of it.
Okay. So poll with twist means move out from the status quo. Do something abnormal. That is the best way of saying that. If a student is, I'm because I'm not aware of the kind of streams that you are owning, I will just probably take an example of marketing. So if I take an example of a guest lecture that I would have taken up for marketing, people may expect me to ask a poll question on marketing. And that is a perception which gets created the moment you publicize the theme and publicize the name of the speaker with the credentials. But what if I don't ask that question at all? What if I ask them a question which is very personal to them, but open for sharing? Something related to their likes and dislikes, something related to their hobbies, something related to their probably their future plans, and keep them tabled basis some of the interaction that I would have had with them in the recent past, so that I can keep some commonality there while I run this poll. The moment, even if a person misses out on answering that poll, so I'm just giving you an example. Out of 60 students in a class, if I ask them about are they passionate about driving a sports car, if I talk about digital marketing and I ask this question, the first, let's say 30 people didn't even factor answering that question. They were not attentive. They thought it's another question on probably digital marketing know-hows. But when the answers came and I started relating to them, those 30 who missed out on answering may find it to be something that they missed out. I'm not saying that it is a assured way of doing it, but this is a trick that we can try and implement. So if that is a possibility of engaging even one out of those 30, then I have a tick mark on me that yes, I was able to convert one. Similarly, some other poll elements on some other theme may work for someone else, and that way, that uncertainty, the degree of uncertainty, helps me engage my audience because they are not sure what is coming their way. So they may be on the lookout of engaging, and then while engaging, if I create a poll, get the response, and then follow it up with another question to everyone where people start answering and I draw inferences from there, then I'm creating a personalized experience. So what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to do is, if I'm getting to know your name who has asked this question, I will quote your name while asking while asking Dr. Sheetal to probably see if you have responded or not. Or I would try and quote your name while answering. So what happens, even if you are getting consumed over a call or a WhatsApp message, the moment you hear your name, you get a recall, oh, there is something that is told to me. So I will come back and my focus will come back onto the session. It's a tricky thing. It's a difficult thing for large gatherings, but for small gatherings, it's definitely possible. And I'm just trying to take help from Dr. Sheetal and Dr. Ghosh to kind of make it happen so that I don't miss out on engaging with you. The same thing can be tried and tested. Obviously, with all the trials, you will get some data points which needs to be looked upon. That's where the importance of analytics will again come. But these are worthy a trial. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Cool. So I will move to the next part, and then whatever questions come, I will be taking them.
Towards the end. Absolutely, no problems.
So again, pictorially trying to share that the question in your mind is, with all the tools and features, how do I assess? So that's the time when you need to go back to the garden and step in with some analytics for data-driven insights. Why I'm emphasizing on this is because tools will always give you data. And if a tool is not giving you data, no matter how economical it is, please don't use it. Because your efforts may not be calibrated well if your tool doesn't support you with data. Now, when I look at analytics, I've mentioned DIY, that is do it yourself, or seek help from your IT and marketing team. These are important elements, and I would request all of you, I know most of you are focused, but I will request all of you to again focus here, because these are some of the tips and tricks that work for me, that work for different brands, and that is what you must be hearing whenever people are talking about numbers. Analyze everything for data drivenness. So post session, most of the time what we do is, most of the time it happens that there is one organizer within the institution who owns these data credentials. So they will know the username password, so they will be running the show. You as a person who's going to steer the session would join that person, that organizer, and run that show. During the show, you will see there are some numbers. So like, for example, I see some numbers right now on my screen. I feel good. Okay, there are these many people who are listening to me. This much of time they have been there with me. These are good numbers to give you a boost when you are sharing something. But the actual important element is post your session. So take a complete dump of the data that can be made available from all the tools that are there, which you are using. And that's why I said, I again reiterate, if you are getting limited on the data points, change your tool. Even if it requires you to invest more, I would say investing on data-driven, data-supported tools is much better than playing blind on perception. Second is use codes. This is where the IT and the marketing team will come in, and this is where I would say focus on the basic. When you try and communicate with your audience, you communicate either with a single link which gives you access to a session, or you go to probably a person and say that this is a session I want to do. That person will create a link and send it across. It goes to the entire world. You don't know who is joining from where, what is the attentiveness, who is important, who's not important. You may never know whether the person whom you wanted to join, that person joined or not. It could be somebody else joining on his or her behalf. So start with the basics of digital marketing where you can do tracking. So whenever you're creating a registration code, registration link, track them for different platforms, track them for different dates and time of promotion, so that you get to know after a set of sessions that you have done, there will be a trend analysis which will be visible for you to refer and comprehend. And then you can focus your effort thereafter on those particular elements which are giving you better ROI. So start with that initially. With these kind of tracking codes, you can also map your social engagement. So you will see people engaging with you. And I'm not talking about the probably the content which is only from an academic standpoint. It is content even beyond that. So you must be doing a lot of research work, you must be publishing research report. So track those elements as well, because the more you share, the more you get people's I would say engagement, the more you get to know what you can expect from the future. And a part of personal branding actually comes here, where your work can be analyzed better and you will get to know how it's actually spreading. The next part is attentiveness scorecard. This is something which is a bit tool dependent right now. I don't want to be biased towards a particular tool, so I will not name it, but there are tools which gives you this kind of a data. Even if some tool is not giving you this kind of data, you can still try and create that data set within your own ecosystem by probably pulling in data from other sources. Require hard work, but if you can do that, that will help you if you are hard pressed on budget. But this attentiveness scorecard is actually important. Then monitoring the response time and rate. So we were talking about the polls and the question and answers and the surveys. That is where this particular term is important, that you need to monitor and the response time and the rate. So after each poll, there is a curve that you will, it's a sinusoidal curve, which you will see. Initially the curve will grow and all of a sudden there will be a trough and then the crest will come and it will go down also. So you have to analyze that time frame. For how many seconds or milliseconds or a minute you are finding engagement in the polls that you're doing. If you see that the polls are deteriorating after 30 seconds, then there's no point in investing another 30 seconds or a minute on that. If that is something that you are deriving from data-driven analytics, don't do it based on perception, because perceptions are not accurate. Data-driven insights will give you that accuracy. So monitor these things and then take a judicious call so that you can optimize your own time and effort to assess the candidate who's responding to these things. Survey which aligns with the content. So many a times surveys are looked upon as a theme being talked about and a product being asked about. So there is a I would say there's a delta and there's a mismatch, because of which people tend to miss out on the surveys. It's better you ask survey questions basis the content. One quick assessment way here is, it's a quick test you can do on the online front, that you gave a handout, follow it up with a survey with curated questions which does not come in a CCP model, that is cut copy paste. So if, for example, if you are let's say I'm talking about digital marketing and I quote a person talking about use of Facebook advertising, but my survey may not use the term Facebook at all. My survey question could be, how do I optimize my cost per click? Now this survey may have an answer which is a part of that handout which I shared on Facebook advertising. But at the same time, a student cannot copy Facebook and search it in that handout and find the answer and send it. It is a response which only and only a person can provide if they were attentive in your session. So if while explaining that handout, I would have definitely mentioned about cost per click. The moment I mentioned that, and the person who registered it can answer this survey question there itself. Give a time frame of, let's say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to answer and send back the surveys, and then map those timing to see how much it took a person to answer, how much time it took. Because the more the time, the more the external factors come in. So the topper of the class may answer it in probably 5 seconds, or even a minute. I'm just giving a minute time. The average students are able to answer it in 3 minutes time slot. So now you have a subset of 1 to 3 minutes, which gives you the majority of the answers being possible to be tabled. Anybody who takes more than 3 minutes means either they are slow, or means that they are now referring to someone else's inputs to answer that and send it to you. So you can draw some analogy there. You can draw some insights and some trends there. If that is a frequent trend, then you know which person is not attentive. You know which person is using class notes made by others to answer, which generally happens in a college environment. So these are some of the elements which we can work out in a smart environment, in a smart way, within the ecosystem which is defined by digital. So I will take a pause here and ask if anyone has any question pertaining to these elements.
Um, we have received one question from Dr. Dilip. He's asking that according to you, which tool is the most comprehensive to enable and best possible attention, to capture best possible attention span of postgraduate students?
So again, I will not answer it as a graduate postgraduate thing. I will answer it as a tool which provides you these analytical elements. So what I will do is because representing Data Security Council of India, we always talk about unbiased ways of talking and sharing things. So I will not take any tool name right now, but I will definitely give you some of these cues. While searching, you can find the tools which match these requirements. So you can look at tools which give you attentiveness scorecard or gives you interest rating. You can look at tools which give you the login, logout, session duration time, multiple login, logout details. You can look at tools which are giving you survey analysis on time. Uh, and I'm mentioning once again that with all of these verbal notes that I'm sharing right now, if you search, you will definitely find one or two tools that match your requirement. And then basis the budgets that you have defined as investment towards digital push, you can take a judicious call. Also, do understand that few of the tools are not meant for this kind of a thing. They are kind of tweaks, or they are, I would say, some permutations and combinations being placed, which kind of work it out for them to push it into another league. So there are video conferencing tools, there are webinar tools, there are roundtable tools. I mean, though one tool can fit everywhere, but each tool has a different set of utilities which define its proficiency. So while you decide on your roadmap of engaging the students, you'll have to think through on what is that you want. And these elements which I've shared on the screens, they are sufficient. Means I can definitely ask you to take screenshots, or if required, I can share the deck later on to kind of uh, share use these terms to find out and search these tools. You will find the answers there. Does that make does that answer the query?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I accidentally disconnected my thing. I will just take a minute.
Sure, sir.
Is the screen visible now?
Not yet, sir. Not yet.
Yeah, I guess I have let me just I could hear some noise. Is it coming from mine only?
I think so, sir.
Okay, I'm sharing it once again. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir. It has come back. Yes.
Okay, great. So moving to the next. Okay, I'm sorry, Dr. Shital. Was there any other follow-up question on that? Dr. Shital, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please. Can you please come again? I lost the connection for a minute.
Okay, I was saying, is there any follow-up question on what we just discussed?
Um, None so far, sir. I mean, they're writing that Google Analytics. You can also elaborate on what role Google Analytics play and how does it actually help people.
Okay, so Google Analytics is something which is largely website oriented or application oriented. I would like to refrain from using Google Analytics right now because unless until you create something where your IT team has created a separate portal where you are engaging your student community, yes, at that time Google Analytics will definitely play a role. Otherwise, for using tools for assessment for virtual classrooms, Google Analytics can be missed for now. But if you want, I can elaborate on that in as I move forward. So I've covered this part. Polls to go deep with a twist. Test hangouts with quick response, mark the timing, that also I have covered. Read the pattern and trend for responses, I have covered. This part I have not covered. So this is important. This is like catching them off guard. I'm just going to take a check once again. Is the audio and video all optimal for everyone?
Yes, sir. You are audible and everything is fine, sir.
Great. Thank you. So, okay. So this part is when you try to get them onto video, not everybody is happy or everybody is wishing to come on a video if they are not ready. So that helps you kind of gauge, and that also sets the pattern for the next session where people can expect them to be on the screen presenting something. So use that as an option to create inquisitiveness as well as bring them under the spotlight. That may help. Connected to assessment, yes, if they're able to do it, that means they are with you. So all your other data points that you have captured so now till now will relate to this phenomena. Fifth is when I talked about that warmth piece, this is connected to that give them a stage to showcase, because students would like, those who are putting in effort, they would like to talk about things, and even if they don't like to do it, it's something that you are helping them, because getting them to be industry ready, public speaking is a virtue. So it is something that the gurus try and inculcate. So this is an easy way of doing it, that make them comfortable in their shoes and tell them that this is the stage, go out there and talk about things that you want to share. So that gives them the confidence, that brings probably a level of confidence for the other audience members also. Those who couldn't do it this time would like to do it the next time. So it builds that engagement, and it will reflect on your assessment scores. And this is the element which I believe is quite common. I won't say that this is not thought of yet. It would have definitely been thought of. So please use this as a practice, that whenever you're doing anything as a derivative of a session, ask them to write the learnings, or if you have given them any questions, send them those questions and ask them to write it rather than type it, because writing involves time, it involves effort, and it involves I would say your ability to comprehend. So let them write, ask them to scan it. If they have scanners at home, well and good. If they don't, then probably a mobile device nowadays have means apps which can means do the scanning piece, and then ask them to send it to you for assessment. This way you will get to know how long it took. So obviously you can factor that, like every other written exams where the 3 hours time limit was calibrated. Probably in the same way you can calibrate short tests or long tests, and then give them this opportunity to come on board and share in a digital way after writing it down. So it mitigates situations of copy paste happening, and a person who has written and sent it to you cannot get it from another person and send it to you in a different name, because the handwriting will be seen. So these are another quick way of analyzing and assessing how much of that content which you have prepared has been retained. So some additional thoughts: use video calls in parallel. So when you're doing a session, like if I would have had your numbers, I would have either sometime in the middle probably would have chatted with you just to see that you are engaged or not. Would have taken feedback from you whether the session is going smoothly or not. Understand what all elements you want me to cover. So there are multiple video call features available. Do them in selective way. You don't need to have them all together. You can create, like the way we're discussing about the breakout sessions, you can do those in WhatsApp. Now WhatsApp allows you for 8 screen sharing, 8 windows in a single screen. Use that. Duo is another option that you can use. Viber is also a known option, and there are multi devices approach there. So you can use all of these in a different way to build that engagement and correlate it with the assessment elements that we discussed earlier. This is where your Google Analytics will come in. So gentlemen who asked me about that, this is where it comes in, because if you're creating private rooms for exclusive sessions, your IT team would be creating it on a web platform, and that will be exclusive. So definitely track your track your website performance and everything through Google Analytics. Define goals, map them, and do a thorough check, and do it along with the data that comes from other sources as well, because that is important, that you have to match the two data points together to find that correlation. Trusting only on one data source may not be sufficient. Again, the same point extended, that if you feel you have the support of management to push in funds to create, please create a separate IT infra. It will help, because then you can add all the elements that we discussed about in searching a tool. You can all add them in one solution that can be either created in-house or through some partner. One more example is, if your students are it's really bright and they are really doing out of the box thinking, they can create a tool for you, because nowadays a lot of hackathons and all these things we are doing, where young students are coming up with fabulous, I would say, set of codes which work really well. The next part is a little bookish, but I believe all of you are doing it, but I still wanted to emphasize on it. Please educate parents on how they should ensure that decorum is there, because now, after parents used to let their children to the school or colleges, they used to be relying on you, but now you are limited in your outreach or your capacity to hold them. So now you have to again go back to the parents, because the parents themselves are working from home. So you have to ask them to learn a few of these elements and help you gauge, so that the child works better. Because if the parents are neglecting something and it doesn't show up in your data point for some reason, then we are actually missing out. So it's always good to have this ecosystem being put together from both sides. Similarly, create interactive report cards. So all the data points that we discussed, when you do the assessment and you share the report card, do it with those data points, because that will definitely give you the kind of means you can make it very, I would say, personalized. So for example, you create a pie chart which says out of the entire batch, 88% were attentive. 88% were attentive. With the next pie chart, a correlated pie chart could be with more than 90% attentiveness scorecard. Now you can have a small sphere highlighting that particular child, saying that you feature in that 90%. So that's an excellent or A plus, whatever grade system you follow. So that way, it will give a personalized feel to the parents and the child, as well as it will give them a clear means call out that you are following data driven insights, so no bluff can work, and whatever is being shared as a report card is actually validated. And then the last part, this I'm a firm believer of this, so I've mentioned this, that you have to learn, unlearn, and relearn, because all these tools and technologies will change with time. What I started off probably 10 years back has become obsolete now, and there are new tools which are now coming in, and I have to learn them if I want to use them. And sometimes the new tools are free, so if I don't learn the use, then I'm missing out on using it for free. So all these things will play an important role. So I will pause here, and then I will take one crucial element, which was on the cybersecurity piece. So I will pause for some time if there's any question. So Dr. Sheetal, Dr. Ghosh, any question that you want me to take up right now?
Sir, they have one question, like two, three people have tried to ask this question. Like, then, given the limited attention span of the student, and there is a vastness of the subject, and the time limitation is also there. So, how to manage everything? Like, you have vast syllabus as well, and yet the students are not attentive in the class. So, which kind of tool do you refer that where there is less wastage time?
So there is no tool that can define that, to be really honest. It has to be agility at core. And when I say agility at core, I mean the way you would have defined running that particular syllabus in a physical world, you'll have to replicate that same in a virtual world. Probably you have to skim through elements which you can trust your students to do it themselves. But the places where your importance is pivotal, you'll have to focus on them, and then you can break it into subsets. Does that answer, or you want me to go a little deeper into it?
No, no, I think that is sufficient, sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other question? Otherwise, I will go to the cybersecurity piece.
None so far, sir.
Okay. I hope I'm not sounding too boring, because when the questions are less, that means either I'm too boring or the slides were sufficient.
No. I think your session is thought provoking, so they are in deep thought. Which question to ask?
No, please feel free, because I am a learner myself. So
Yeah.
please feel free to share all your questions, because what you share as question probably helps me refine this slide deck and send it across. If it requires me to do some research, I can probably do that and send it across.
Right, sir. There are questions like that. They want, somebody. They want that. Can you show it using a tool? Means demonstration.
I would have loved to do
Demonstration.
that. And so which part particularly they want me to demonstrate?
Um, Sir, I mean, they are saying in general. Can you take a use of poll? Poll. You are saying that in any of the app you prefer to use. How you demonstrate the use of poll in any of the app you prefer to use? This is a question by Mr. Rajendra.
How do you demonstrate?
The usage of poll in any of the app you prefer to use. Like they are asking for the preference of the app which you using, which you believe is better than other, and how to
Uh,
conduct poll in that.
so okay, polls. To be really honest, polls won't change much in different tools, because polls have a similar pattern. It's just the analytical element behind the polls which are important. So if a tool gives you the timing of a response of a poll, or if not the timing, at least who responded to your poll, that is important. Because right now when you are running a poll, you are running an approximation element. You are getting to see the result, but it doesn't tell you that even if that 85%, 84%, no, 85% said that yes, no, and 14% said yes at the start of the poll, it doesn't tell me that out of that 150, 200, 300 people, 85% of them actually did that. The poll tells me that out of 100, 84 or 85 said this. So what you see on the screen is just a subset of the kind of engagement that was there out of the entire group. So you have to delve into the tool's backend analytical elements to see out of those 300 who registered and joined, who were those 100 who participated in your poll. That is how you have to do it. So there is no one tool that I can, and that's why I said that I won't be doing any tool training this time, because it requires a lot of other things to be done in parallel, because by the virtue of using one tool, I cannot do another tool training so easily. So there are many tools out there which I have mentioned in the one of the slides earlier. So you can try and use those for polls. After running those polls, take the dump, the data dump from your organizer, and see out of the entire audience that you were catering to, who responded, what time they responded, and then do a trend analysis on a few sessions that you may have run in the past or that you plan to run in the near future, and then draw those inferences. Because the more you take data driven decisions, the more accurate your assessment will be for that particular child. I hope that answers somehow. If not,
Yes,
then
yes.
I can take it offline. I can take
There,
it offline later on.
yeah, actually, there are questions asking about naming the tools, which you have already said that you do not want to name any particular tool.
No,
So I think
I have
we can
named a
able.
few tools. I will take them back to the slide. Not a problem. These tools are not a problem. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go deep into each of these tools. So there are these tools which we discussed. These are all market available tools. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to pinpoint any one of them and say this is the best one for this, because every user has a different requirement, and for each user each tool may work in a different way. So there is no one size fit all concept here. Basis the requirement, yes, if you want to ask those questions for the kind of requirements you have, please feel free to reach out to me after this session, and I will be able to answer you one-on-one on that. But in this session I cannot say this because it will be generalizing the tools, which will be wrong at my end, because each tool has a different USP. Each tool has a different reason of it being in front of you. All these tools, they were created with a different notion and different requirement. Now we are using them because either they are economical or they are available. Many reasons are there, but it doesn't mean that that tool is the best tool to look at. So basis your requirements, we can definitely have a discussion post this session where I can share it offline on a one-on-one basis. And then Dr. Sheetal, Dr. Ghosh, you may please connect them if they want to ask any other follow-up question. I will be happy to answer them.
Sure, sir.
So shall I take this section first and then we'll go to the Q&A?
Absolutely right, sir. Yeah.
Great. So like I mentioned in the slide title, that power of internet and technology connecting the world, we also need to understand the cybersecurity and the privacy aspects of the virtual environment. This is very important considering that a lot of our efforts, investment, and personal things will be at stake. So what we need to safeguard ourselves against and the students against. So I'm just naming a few of them for now, because I will go elaborate on a different note. So you can have a DDoS attack, you can get issues of data theft, financial leakage, espionage, or overall physical or mental safety. Now, this is an overall view. I will go deep into it now. The most common attack vectors where we need to safeguard ourselves before we even think of going onto a virtual front are phishing and ransomware or malware attacks. Phishing, I believe I will just take a quick, again, a question on, can we do a quick poll on the fly? Is that a possibility?
I afraid no, sir. If you want, I can create it. But sir, I'm afraid I'll not be able to do it within a time. Within a minute.
Okay, no issues. I think
We can ask the question and ask the participant to respond while chat.
are aware of phishing. How many of them are aware of phishing, and how many of them are aware of ransomware and malware? So what what I could do is, I don't know whether this actually allows me, I could ask that in the poll thing. If it allows me, I don't know. I'm just taking a liberty of getting the tool that I have in front of me.
Yeah, sir.
Did it
It
work?
is actually working. Yes.
Great. So again, a good example of how you can engage. Though I am not an organizer, but this tool gave me that option to push a poll, and within a few seconds we could do it because the question was small. So again, one thing that we can draw as a cue for creating engagement, because I could see some numbers flashing now.
So, do you want me to tell you the numbers, or
I guess
should we
it's
continue
visible.
with it?
I could see
Okay,
it,
sir.
53 and
Yeah.
46. The only thing that I'm not too sure is that whether they are getting an option to choose only one of them or both of them. Because I did it in haste, so I forgot to add both of them as an option. If they can just answer you on the chat,
Yeah.
are you getting options to select both, or they are getting options to select only one of them?
There are. I think there's no option of selecting both.
Okay, so it's only one of them that they are
Yeah.
getting.
So
Okay, so I'm assuming that basis the numbers that I see, I would generalize right now because my data capturing was inaccurate. But what I could generalize here is this captured that most of the people are aware of phishing and ransomware. So that's a very good thing, and I'm really happy to see because all of you being the flag bearers, knowing about this really helps. So in the interest of time and for those who are not aware, quickly I will say phishing is more about giving you those customized emails and trying to trick you so as to act on some link and then probably share something with them. Ransomware and malwares are really the dangerous ones where you click on the link accidentally. Also, it takes control of your system and it can lock your system and then demand ransom against it. Why this is important is because there are awareness issues, there are insufficient budget allocations, and absence of policy within the education sector. This is not against any of the institutes that you're representing. This is about a generic feedback, a result of a survey that was done where these were called out. What we can do, what is needed. I will just keep this slide on for a few minutes so that you can read it out. I will also read it out in the interest of everyone. The first point in itself is the most crucial one because here we talk about online meeting software and the security associated with them. So what we should do, and this is a request to all the product owners, all the tool owners in the organization, be it IT, be it marketing, be it individual faculty members, please set a new username and ID password for each meeting if possible. Or even play around with them and keep an Excel saved with you so that at least you're not vulnerable to the external world. Then second is enable waiting room feature so that every user or student can enter only when the host or the teacher conducting the meeting admits him or her. Once you authenticate their existence, then you can take ownership of them being in the system. I know there is still probably a black hole here that the student may be an imposter, but at least you can do an initial check. And that's what you can do with the student name in the meeting ID and verify them. Disable the join feature before the host joins, because if somebody joins your meeting before you join, your data is gone. Then allow screen sharing only by host. Don't allow screen sharing from others because coming on video is still okay. Coming on screen sharing, you can access it. Then disable allow remove participants to rejoin, because many times I as a participant may move out of the meeting and somebody trying to gain access can use my credential. So once I've moved out, I've moved out. I cannot come back. That is the kind of strictness that we have to follow. Restrict disable file transfer feature. If not required, as in there are special cases where you may require it, so do it in the view of your IT controller. Lock meeting once all attendees have joined. And the host should end the meeting and not just leave. Because if you leave, you have made the system vulnerable. I will stay on the slide and check if there was any question pertinent to this.
There is one question by Dr. Pawan Kumar. These days, phishing attacks are increasing. How can we cope up with these problems, specifically for the people who are not aware about the technology?
So one is you have to educate. That comes as the part of the next slides also. You'll have to train them. You have to do a bit of research, follow Data Security Council of India, which is one of the bodies which is working extensively in cybersecurity and data privacy. So we are releasing advisory documents. We have been doing it since the lockdown started. Also follow certain and then share any of your feedback that has been as a part of experience with certain. There is another nodal body which is working in this domain. So these are two important bodies where you can engage with, and regular updates will help you mitigate such situations.
Yes, we have another question. Is Miss Dr. Divya Goyal is asking that can we log meeting in MS Teams?
Uh, right now, MS Team does not give you a lock meeting option. It does. It will plan to come up with a different layer of protection, wherein you will have any which way their environment right now is end-to-end encrypted. So you will only be able to access when you share the meeting link with the particular person.
So there is another question which is coming. Like they're saying, what happens when the student drop for technical breakdown, and tries to come back?
So when that happens, so there are two ways to mitigate that. One, do a prep call before you actually do a real session, so that you get to check that. Second, keep your recordings with you, so that in case some student missed out due to a reason of this kind which cannot be handled, or that is something not in control, they can at least benefit out of it. Because if you allow, then the same route can be used by a miscreant and take advantage.
Right, sir. We have another question. Like Ms. Alpna Agarwal is saying that some network issue happens and it gets disconnected. But like you said, that once out is out. So how to deal with this? It's more about infrastructure related.
The same answer to it, that I would say please try and keep the recording with you and share it offline, so that they don't miss out completely. And doing a dry run is always better.
Uh, One more question. Like, is there any security problem when we rejoin the meeting due to interruptions or internet failure or power failure?
Yes, there are, because most of the time, honestly, in a personal mode, we may not see that happen. But if you are influential person, and if you have been traced by few of the malignant folks out there, this can be a cause of concern, because they are waiting for such avenues only, where one area of one loophole and they are in, and you are moved out. So I would say following these will help. Plus, I'm coming back to the Microsoft Teams question. MFA is pushed by Microsoft, that is multi-factor authenticator. It's a two-factor authenticator. So all those things help. So you don't need to worry too much when such, uh, uh, I would say, elements are there. It does support single sign-on through Active Directory, but since you are going to work in an environment, yes, actually there's a workaround. Sorry that I did not mention it. Most of the students can have your domain credential, because they are part of your institute. So you can create their web domains, like their email IDs, on your domain. So if you have a domain specific access point, then you can route them through that itself.
Yeah. There's one more question. What is online cold call?
What is online cold call?
Yeah.
So it's a tricky one, because online cold call, as per my understanding, I may be wrong. I have to research a bit more on that. But online cold call is not about a cold call which used to happen earlier, where you just go and meet people and check it. Online cold calls are tricky elements which are created to get users to answer certain questions. Sometimes they are done by brands as a part of their marketing activities. Sometimes they are done by the cyber attackers as well to lure into something not needed. So they are tricky forms. So there are multiple instances where you will find a lot of forms being sent across where they would like you to fill that form. I would recommend please focus on the URLs. There are a few things which are important, particularly when the shortened URLs are concerned. Whenever there is a shortened URL of bit.ly, just add a plus next to it. You will get the entire name. So it will validate whether it is coming from a valid source or not. A Google shortened also has a similar thing. Just add a plus. I would say there was another one which I was thinking. Just give me a minute. I remembered saving it somewhere. This is also important. So I will just take a minute to refer it in one of my notes in the phone that I've made. Yeah, for tiny URL. For tiny URL, if you want to check, always add HTTP colon / preview this term before the tiny URL so that the entire URL is seen. This way you can safeguard yourself from any attack. So I just saw a chat notification by Chandrolaka Biswas on handwritten handouts being hard to read and can't be paid to text-to-speech software. Agreed, but that is an option to look at if you are not able to find the kind of engagement which can give you a due diligent assessment. Then this is an option to work on it. There are better tools coming up in the market nowadays where text to speech is happening, but again, it's about text to speech. I don't, or speech to text, the other way around as well. I don't want you to focus on that because it is something which will instill a cut copy paste mechanism. It's better to give it in a handwritten way. Let them come back to you asking for those points that sir ye samajh nahi aaya, wo samajh nahi aaya. But it will be good to do it that way because it will safeguard both the interest, your efforts being put as well as the student retaining what was taught. Shall I move to the next slide? I guess now we have overshot on the time, and I'm really sorry
Yeah,
that I
absolutely,
overshot on the time.
absolutely.
I will quickly just move to the next slide to share this element. ERP solution requirement, because many of the institutes are having ERP for processing their faculty salaries, student data management. So just read through these, I would say. Implement multi-factor authentication. This is mostly for the IT folks, but good to be aware for each and every one of you, so that when you have a discussion internally, you can talk about these things. Then maintain access rights according to the roles so that you can avoid overexposure of information. And version must be have complex passwords to maintain the standard sanity check. And data security must be focused while implementing any of the ERP softwares. Secure email gateway, again, for the fact that if you are using a domain specific for institute, please try and use all these elements. I can keep the slide on for some time so that you guys can just run through it. There's not much that I need to talk you through in this because these are quite easy to understand. In case there is any query, please ask me. I will answer that particular segment. And that is only because of the interest of time. Otherwise, I would have read through them. But in the interest of time, if you want me to answer any particular point, please let me know. Dr. Shital, any question on any of the pointers?
None so far, sir. However, one question is coming which is not related to this, but Amanpreet Kaur, she wants to ask that how to tackle the situation of many students at a time, and they are creating problem
I'm sorry, how to tackle a situation?
of having many students in a class and then they are creating trouble for the faculty members, like we have seen in the newspapers that the students come into the class for virtual mode and then they create nuisance in the class.
Correct. So,
So how to handle it?
okay. So the very first thing that one needs to do is first you have to define the target audience, how big batch you want to cater to, because in my opinion, a focus group of selective batch will be better. Can you just give me some numbers that what are the number of students you are going to cater at one time? What is the maximum that the group who's attending this call can share with me?
Usually the batch size is 60, or batch sizes of usually 60 students at one go.
Mhm.
But due to, maybe now the teachers have been pulled in, so they may be having classes of students numbered 200 or 300. But this is, not every time happening. Otherwise, the standard batch size is 60 only.
Okay, 60, I would say 60 is still manageable on a personal note where if you see there is somebody creating nuisance, you can directly reach out over a personalized chat or a call in parallel. For big batches, I would say use the tool features like muting everyone else, uh, controlling what they can see and share. So there are all these tools which allow you to show the number of attendees, the questions that have been asked, all these things. So you can choose to play around with those visual elements so that they don't play around, means they don't create anything of a ruckus just by means doing something unneedful. So that is one way of doing it, but keeping a batch size smaller will always be beneficial.
One question which is related to Zoom. Zoom as a platform has been notified by Government of India that it is not safe to use. So there's one question by Dr. Madhava. He's asking that is it safe? Do we face hacking problem because of Zoom?
Okay, so I was anticipating this question will come. So the answer to this is yes, it is safe. I won't say that it is not safe, but I'm not the best person to answer it on behalf of uh, on behalf of a government here or anyone for that matter. It's a personal opinion that I find it safe if I implement its safety measures. So Zoom does allow me to have end-to-end encryption, which itself is a, I would say, a strong step from Zoom that helps me say that, yeah, I'm ready to invest my time and effort on a Zoom session and trusting that my data is safe. Zoom has also made a lot of tweaks. Yes, it was under the breach, and they have come up with some solutions on that also, which is also being discussed and quite. It has been quite vocal. People have been vocal about it. That what are the changes elements they have done. So there are unique ID and passwords that are there, and the protection level has been beefed up. The lock after multiple login attempts has come in. So there are multiple overlay networking stack has been there. So a lot of these benefits have been added, which will always kind of add to this. I would say the safety element, but at least from a personal standpoint, I will say yes. I can look at investing my time and effort on Zoom because now it is after the attack. Yes, they have come up and they have made these important tweaks which are important. One of the key elements which I will just share while wrapping up covers a lot of these elements. Shall I move to the next slide, or is there any other question?
No, sir. We can move to the next slide now.
Okay. So secure email gateway and web application continues with, these are purely technical elements. So I will keep it on the slides for you to probably keep a screenshot if you want, so that you can share it with your IT team member and check whether all of these are in place or not. Now this is where that question of Zoom can be answered to a large extent. The very first thing that one needs to do is keep your device software updated, including your antivirus and operating system. Second, check the permissions given to all the applications that you have. Even with Zoom, you have to go to the settings and enable the end-to-end encryption, which is something beneficial. So the new update, I believe that was 5.1, if I'm remembering it correctly, will have that feature which you should enable. And thereafter, it kind of limits the kind of concerns that you had. And now there are other players which are coming in where you see GeoMeet and all the other players like let's go to webinars. All the names that I've taken, MS Teams, Cisco WebEx, all of these tools have all these best-in-class security measures, which you should definitely be looking at, and at least updating your mobile apps, because one of the vulnerabilities are seen on the mobile apps itself. So please update your mobile apps as well, and your mobile application operating system and the security patch. Most of the Android users require that security patch to be shared by their manufacturer. So these do come in bits and pieces, but whenever they come, they need to be just taken up. And some few general checklist training, which we mentioned, multi-factor authentication, which is required. Bring your own device, and privacy policy learning is important, so please use that. Use legal applications. That is definitely one of the biggest mandates here. Don't go for pirated ones from probably Nehru Place or some other place, or any online torrent leaks. Don't use that. They will have virus elements. Don't trust them. And use legal applications and do the frequent updates. So with that, I will like to bring this session to a close from my end. I will always say think outside the box while digging deep into your content. That's where the books, the learning material will come in. Hone your skills on the digital piece and make use of all the available resources so that you can draw inferences, drive analytics, and take corrective measures. So that will be it from my end. Q&A we have taken during the session. In case there's any other question coming up, please feel free to shoot that. Otherwise, I would like to thank you for your time and efforts today.
Yes, thank you so much. Like we have already exhausted all the questions right now, and it was really informative and insightful session, sir. Specifically in the era when we are moving towards more and more virtual based training, it is very very informative, and would like to at Gita Radhan International Business School would like to extend our sincere thanks and gratitude for you sparing time and enlightening our participants. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for having me here. It was really good to connect with the academia.
Right.
I've always been I've always been in connect on different modes, and this has always been a thrilling experience. So thank you everyone. This has been a good experience for me as well, and please feel free to reach out whenever you have any query. I'm sorry if I couldn't answer some of the questions which were directly towards the brand, because in the interest of my professional etiquettes, I cannot take any name, but more than happy to help you in whichever capacity I can.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Okay.
Thank you.